Michael Fisher is the founder of Codify Baseball. Jack McMullen, Aram Layton here. And Michael, first of all, thank you so much for getting up with us. You're on the West Coast. Aram's on the East Coast. I'm in the Midwest right now, so it's 11 a.m., 10 a.m., and 8 a.m. for you. So you got the short end of the stick. How are you getting through the lockout right now?
It's actually been busier. If a player wants to go look up some info on their team website, guess how that goes? You're locked out. If they want to talk about, arm angles or release points or anything, it's like, well, they can't really talk to anybody with the teams now. So it's been busier, and they don't like that feeling of being shut out of resources. So it's definitely helped me. Not much of an off season though. So the wife isn't thrilled.
I understand. Obviously no headshots on the team site that they can go to and see their mug. So hey, real quick, before we get the ball rolling here, Codify, in simple terms, as simple as it can be, because obviously you got your start in financial analysis to start, you then fully transition to baseball. The gist of Codify is what in your words?
That's a good question. Codify is kind of bridging the gap there between the sources of analytics players have. When they get information that they use, it might be coming second or third or fourth or fifth hand. They don't have typically the ability to ask questions about what is this? Where did it come from? Why the hell are we looking at this? Yeah. Why am I looking at average slugging on balls in play when I threw 10 pitches to this guy and he only hit one of them? Yeah. Where did the other 9 show up in this? You're telling me not to throw this pitch. And I like all the stuff like that. You see, I'm avoiding trying to put a really tight dictionary answer on it, but Codify, I think, has succeeded and evolved by evolving and fitting whatever that is. And every guy has a different need. Yeah. The team stuff's cookie cutter. That's fine. It's just like banking on the banking side. You can't custom fit to every customer. Right. But guess what? We can custom fit to each pitcher. And that's what we're doing. Every guy's different, and we're acknowledging that in everything we do.
I just pointed at Jack because we were just talking off the air before, and that was exactly a point that we came to before we started recording, before you hopped in here, was just, it's so cookie cutter for certain teams. They have their philosophy, and that works for them because they'll identify the candidates, right, that they think will fit that cookie cut system that they have. But guess what? Sometimes those guys end up being a little bit different than you thought. And once they get in there, now they're suffering because they're trying to be told to be something that they're not, right? Like you're telling a leopard to be a zebra, basically, and it's just not going to work. So that's why it's really fascinating on your individual approach. And what's really interesting about this to me is that you talk about how it makes it different from what everybody else is able to get from their teams, because teams put a lot of money into this kind of thing, but it's just not as individualized. How do you have the time in the day? Because this is your thing, I'm sure you've built out a staff as Codify has gotten more successful, but how do you have the time to help all of these players? Because there's a list on codifybaseball.com. It's just pictures of all of the faces of the players that you've worked with. And it's a lot. I didn't count them, but it's a decent amount. How do you manage the time to give each player their time a day?
Yeah, actually on that site, there are no private clients showing. There's players who don't want their teams to know they're working with me. So tack another 50% onto that. But to answer your question, this is 5+ years of evolution, starting out with the first guy, Dan Straley, and trying to make maps and realizing the first ones sucked, but they were better than the team ones, and just evolving that and learning how to tackle that question you're answering. How the hell do I service 60, 70, 80, whatever guys when you don't know when the phone's going to ring? Right. It's tough. During games, don't get a lot of phone calls because it's illegal. So it's actually quietest during the games. And each guy kind of has their own little ritual of when they want to chat. So I know, let's say Liam Hendricks. I know what Liam wants. I know when he wants it. I know when he's going to want to talk about anything after the fact. And it just kind of fits it all together like a big, it's kind of like Jenga, I guess. And yeah, sometimes I take a guy on and he's like, I want to call you after every inning or every pitch or we can't really do that. And you shouldn't be doing that. But it hasn't been a problem yet, believe it or not. If you had asked me that question at the start, hey, can you take on another 50 or 60 guys and service them? Like, Probably not, but it's worked out fine, and haven't had any head bumping at all, really.
I'm sure your iCal or your Google Calendar is just like constantly blocked off. It's probably like 30-minute increments.
It's in flux, yeah.
Yeah,
But those guys, but they don't in the off season it's been like that, but during the season it's just on the fly. I mean, the phone will just buzz, and it's a lot of texting. It's not a lot of phone calls. They don't like to call from the locker rooms and stuff, but there's a lot of, hey, I'm going to use the slider twice as much today. You with me? And we talk that kind of stuff just on the fly.
Yeah. So what does that communication look like? Because I was reading a great article from Sox on 35th, and being a native Chicagoan, know you talked to them recently. You kind of explain the onboarding process for a new pitcher, and you'll get acclimated with them. You'll answer any questions that they need to be answered, because obviously this is a guy who is on the precipice of signing a multi-million-dollar deal. He needs to have trust in everybody that he interacts with. So he's got to have trust in you. How do you build that trust and say, listen, we're going to tailor your arsenal. We are going to tailor you to get you your $100 million deal like Kevin Gausman in the top right of your website right now?
Right. The answer has changed over time. Obviously, the second guy I had, that was a different thing. Like, okay, great that it worked with Dan Straley, but where's the track record? It's nice he throws 91, but I'm Blake Trinan. Is it going to work with my turbo sinker and my slider and my all that stuff? Now it's, wait, you just made Kevin Gausman, which I didn't, by the way. But perception is, you just made Kevin Gausman a 9-figure contract. He didn't throw any faster. His splitter didn't split more. But gee, he knows how to mix pitches a little better and knows where to use it a little better. And so a lot of that hurdle that you're talking about exists for everybody, but it's almost like they've answered it before they call a lot of times. Like, I already trust that you know what you're doing. You've been vetted.
Right.
Not everybody. I don't cold call anyone. The door's open and I try to get guys to come to me. So it's different. If I was cold calling, that would be a real big problem to try to convince everybody. So I have just chosen not to try to do that. But I answer questions, and we pull up their maps in that first meeting and look at some stuff. And there's always something in there that is surprising. And so we talk about, like, why am I saying you should use your slider backdoor? Yeah. You don't ever use it. So how would I know it would be good? And we talk about that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
And sometimes if a guy's all in, he'll go use it a couple times. And I mean, we're rolling dice, but often it works. And okay, there's no questioning past that point.
It's really interesting, because something that I've noticed and something I was reading from some of the things that you've said in other interviews is just, sometimes it's as simple as just throwing your better pitch more and the pitches that aren't effective less. And was it almost surprising to you how often pitchers maybe don't even realize that they're not doing that? Like, it's sorry to boil it down to such a simple question, but it seems like sometimes pitchers are just not throwing the pitches that work better for them more, and vice versa.
But both ways, absolutely. The teams are really pressuring players to rely on their primary and secondary pitches a lot in general, which is interesting. And often right, by the way, but often wrong. There are a lot of guys that have a third or fourth pitch that they don't trust because it's not elite, it's an average or a little bit below average pitch. But damn, if you throw it 10% of the time, from the hitter's perspective, it changes everything. Giolito, fastball changeup for a long time. And we've talked a lot over the years about his slider usage, and you see he started to use it a lot more in the second half and just was lights out. What do you do as a hitter when you have that optimal, when you're facing an optimal mix with any of these guys? If they have 3 weapons to use against you, you're in a lot of trouble. Other guys, for sure. Why the hell are you throwing more than 2 pitches? It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes the intel is screaming, just, you know what, let's work on that third pitch in the off season. Please, please don't throw it. Yeah. It happens a lot with curveballs. The guys have, they care a lot about getting ambushed on the first pitch, and it's kind of got cool to throw curveballs on the first pitch. And that didn't work out so well for a lot of guys. So it happens the way you say a fair amount, but it's usually the other way of encouraging them to throw a few more pitches and just show something. Lance McCullers. Yeah. You don't see a lot of four-seamers, but if you were batting against Lance McCullers and you're worrying about the slider and the sinker and the curveball, you don't want to see a four-seamer.
As soon as it gets up here, you're screwed.
And now you're like, wait a second, wait. He's going to throw me four-seamers up there? Yeah. So I definitely encourage him as an example. Throw 5 4-seamers. Now he's an interesting guy because he's like, it's a challenge to throw 5 pitches in a game of one type because, you don't get into that rhythm. So some guys aren't, it doesn't work so well for some guys, but other guys are just, if you're in the batter's head and they know they can't guess and they have to read, well, they're, it's a totally different ballgame.
I want to get back into some of the individual examples here, but we at Just Baseball love working in chronological order. So naturally, 12 minutes into the interview, we're going to go back to the beginning. How did this become your passion?
Oh, gosh. I mean, baseball's been my passion forever. To begin with, I had season tickets when I was a little kid for the A's, 7 years old, taking Bart into the game. I don't know why my parents let me do that, but they did. And so I've loved baseball forever, but to get into the game, it's just not reasonable. I mean, if you look back 10 years ago, it's all Ivy Leaguers. They're, you meet some guy who went to Brown and Yale, and he's the 4-string video guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm not getting into this. And even if I do, it's going to be an internship and I need to pay I need to support my family. Never even thought about it. But once I started working with Straley, and that worked for a year, and people started noticing he's waving this stuff around. What are you looking at? And how come you're getting guys out with 90-mile-an-hour fastballs? And, I mean, these guys aren't in it for very long, and they want to know, this could help me. I might be selling shoes next year. I could be one pitch away from the end of my career.
Yeah.
So, it was just a snowball after that. As far as passion, that was the easy part because I love baseball. Banking, the banking stuff, I'm good at the analytics there. I'm good at that, but it's not fulfilling to make some faceless entity more money. I'd much rather do this, hopefully till I'm done working.
Totally understand that. I had a friend growing up, and I'll leave the organization out of it, but Stanford graduate, I think like a 3.7, 3.8 GPA, and he was making $8 an hour as an intern in an MLB front office. Stanford graduate doing that stuff. I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. So starting in something else, following this passion, and then you have that breakthrough with Dan Straley, then you have that second breakthrough with Blake Trinan. And then it was all systems go from there. How quickly did it pick up after that?
Pretty quickly. Added Sean Doolittle that year as well, and he had an all-star year. Tommy Malone was throwing, underhand and getting guys out somehow. And those 4 guys kind of carried that year. It got into the next year, and then it started to be like, wait a second, I haven't really pursued growing this. It's just growing organically. And the me is going to kick my ass if I don't try to make this work. If it doesn't work, fine, go back to what you're doing. That's fine. But sometimes in life, like, you just have to try.
Yeah.
You just have to try. It's sitting right there. And that's what I chose to do. The COVID thing, of course, hit right as I made that decision. And we're like, great, let's jump all into baseball. And then they don't play, which means literally zero income. Certainly some hurdles there. But the growth has been exponential. If you look at those guys on that banner, it's insane.
It's insane.
Giolito comes on, throws a no-hitter. Liam Hendricks calls me from Japan. See, I'm sitting next to Blake Trinan, and he says I can become an all-star with this stuff. And I'm like, well, I mean, we don't, your mileage may vary, but I mean, he's a complete monster because you talk about trust. He completely trusts this stuff. It's right into his routine, and he's just a complete animal.
He's also got a tarot card reader. He's got his own tarot card reader.
Whatever works.
I didn't know that.
He does. And, he's got his routine. And it's funny. We were talking yesterday. A batter will come up to the plate and like it's a friend or something. And he's like, this isn't going to work. I can't go against him. So just kind of, I think he looked at me funny, or he just creates something to piss him off. And, because that's his routine, to get pissed off. And I'm in his routine. He trusts the stuff. There's been times when he's been told to do things that my stuff would not tell him to do. He's trusted me. It's worked. It clearly works for him. And of course, then he goes from 4 DFAs to 50, 5 million or whatever.
Right.
And again, these guys, if you were sitting in that dugout or the bullpen watching this stuff, you'd want to hear more about it too.
100%.
Right. So it's a big snowball. It's still rolling. It'd be nice if they weren't locked out. It'd probably have a lot more guys going. But actually, hopefully this lockout will push some more over. At some point, at some point, I don't know, maybe it will be more constricted to X number of pitchers, but right now I can service them. So
cool.
Some guys just pay for map. They throw a check, send me maps, and they talk to them 3 times a year.
Wow.
I'm not saying I like that, by the way.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that's great, easy money, but that's not really what I want to do.
Because you want to make your impact, right? Like you
Absolutely.
feel like you've said it, you're hands-on, you're individualized.
Right.
This isn't something that it's almost like going to physical therapy for 2 weeks and then leaving, right? Like you're not going to get anything out of it,
right?
That you would need, right? This is a process. So what would you say generally? I mean, I'm sure it's different case by case. How long does it usually take to start seeing these results and start seeing the pitcher start to adapt? Is that a very case by case basis?
The quicker they adapt, the quicker they see the results. Pitch to pitch, obviously not. I had one guy, the very first pitch he threw with me was a home run on a good pitch too.
Hey, that'll happen. These hitters are pretty good, Michael. I mean, that's the challenge, right? These evil hitters are pretty darn good too.
Right. The big thing that my guys learn, I think, if there's one thing, is how to separate luck from bad execution, bad planning. And don't go away from that good pitch that you just rolled snake eyes one time, but it happens a lot. It's human nature. You know, I just burned myself on this cup of coffee. Like, you don't go back to the coffee because it's good coffee and it's a good mug. Like, I'm not drinking out of that mug again. Right. It's human nature. Yeah, and that's been a big thing with a lot of guys. The quicker they trust it, the quicker they see the results. Then it's like, oh, I mean, it's almost like cheating at first because the teams know the patterns. The thing they're pretty good at is seeing pitch patterns of how guys have pitched. So if all of a sudden some guy's throwing backdoor sliders and he's dropping curveball, like this guy didn't even throw a curveball, and he just threw me 7 curveballs, and that's unsettling. And usually if the guy's executing, produces good results the first game. So it's up to the pitcher. It's kind of hard to half-ass the strategy and kind of pick and choose what, you know, but it can be done, but it produces chaotic results for sure.
You've got guys with entirely different pitch mixes and in where they throw their pitches on here. I mean, I'm looking at Marcus Stroman and Logan Webb right here. And those are 2 of the best ground ball pitchers in the game. Oof. Logan Webb, we think, is like superstar caliber pitcher here. Yes. And then you've also got guys like Frankie Montas and Shane Baz, who are 98 at your face, try and meet it. How do you adapt to each of these guys? I mean, you could have Montas at 11:30 and then you could have Logan Webb at noon, and you got to talk about entirely different pitchers.
Right. Just like when I onboard them, I pop up their arsenal and I look at their pitch mix and I run everything through my system that I've spent 5 years developing to show what's effective where. I usually pull a random subset of batters. By the time I've worked with those guys for a while, I know it from memory, but it's the same kind of thing going into each conversation. Who are you? If it's the first one, who are you? How do you think? What do you need? And if it's the 64th one, it's what do you need today? And we've already talked about, Montas, how much are you throwing the splitter to righties or whatever it is. And it's pretty seamless at this point. But man, these guys, I mean, just every single one of these guys is so talented, and it's so cool to, I mean, we're talking about the top of the pyramid here. I mean, you might see someone and think they're a crappy pitcher, but it's like, no, these guys are at the very top of the pyramid to even be anywhere near you've seen them play professionally, and they all have something to bring to the table. And I haven't really found anybody that I thought, dude, sorry, I can't help you. You don't have the weapons. Like they all do. I'm not saying to be all-stars, but to, succeed and maintain their career. Everybody has something just about.
Well, I was actually going to reach out and see if you would check out my pitch mix and see if we can optimize it a little bit. But I think I might be the first person where you'll say,
as soon as I see
78's not going to play.
No, dude, as soon as I see you pitch on TV, give me a call and we'll maintain the streak.
Sounds great. But building off of the advice that you give, I know something that's really big in baseball now, and that has become, it's funny because you see the evolution of the way prospects are perceived and the things that you look for in pitchers, players in general. It used to always be you want the tall, long, lanky guy that gets high release point. Now you're seeing the Max Myers, the Jack Leiters, where you want the low vertical attack angle as something that really helps you to get that riding action on your fastball. Obviously, that's not for every single type of pitcher, but for those types of guys, that's something you want. How much are you influencing vertical attack angle, release point, stuff like that? Because that's where you start to get into even a more, I wouldn't say complicated, but just a whole different beast over there where you're getting into mechanics and things like that.
That teams probably aren't touching.
Yeah, not much.
Right. Some might be trying to. I know some don't get anywhere near that for sure. I'm definitely addressing that. We definitely look at guys come in with their fastball, and I'll look at certainly release points and go, hey, it looks like you have potential if you can fit it into your routine to get these results. This is what I would have told you if you had 2 more inches of rise on your fastball, for instance. It happened with Liam for sure. The guy is amazing, but it's like, dude, if you can just go over here just a little bit, it's an injury risk. Anytime you tell somebody who's done something potentially forever to do something different, it's an injury risk. And I don't want to be that guy either.
Right.
But the benefits of a couple of inches are enormous. And actually, Liam had the least drop with gravity of any fastball in the major leagues. It's something we watch all the time. But coming in, to answer your question, we do talk about hypotheticals of what if you could get a little bit more on your slider or a little bit more rise on your fastball. Where are you comfortable using it? Some guys are like, I can put it in the top half of the zone whenever I want. Well, how about the top third? Or when you missed down or up? We talk about that stuff all the time. So there's a lot of hypotheticals. As far as the kids, what's been interesting, I don't work with too many of them.
Yeah.
But what I do is I profile them and I show them what would happen if they took the mound in a big league game right now.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I just started working with Wes Burton, who's the psychopath that you see on Ninja sometimes. The guy's talking to himself. I think he was the psychopath of the year or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
He's a complete nut. And he's whatever he is, 6'8".
Mm-hmm.
Massive vertical. And they tell him to throw fastballs all the time. What we're going to work on is like, what if you had to be a more advanced pitcher and you couldn't just, you can survive in your fastball right now, but don't you want to learn how to pitch? Not trying to insult anybody, by the way. But you don't have to throw a second or third pitch, but why not be ready? So when you're in the minor leagues next year, maybe you're ready to go. I can pop up a map against, here's what Vlad Jr. would be doing against that right now. And
he went 8 for 8 with 8 home runs.
Yeah. See that pitch? Yeah. We need to tighten that up a little bit. Instead of teaching them how to get guys with aluminum bats out or whatever, it's like, here's, let's start to learn. And that's been fascinating. The vertical approach angle is huge. What does the bat swing look like?
Yeah.
From each side, and what do the pitch paths look like? That's in the core of my system.
When did Shane Baz take you on? Because that is a guy that he literally flipped the light switch in terms of command when he was in the minors, and then he comes up and he's maybe the most exciting pitcher in baseball right now because of what he could possibly do. When did you kind of get involved with Shane Baz?
Yeah, that was what was he in the Arizona Fall League in 2019? Was it? I think.
Yeah.
Time is so distorted with COVID and all.
Yes.
It's the last 2 years are a blur.
Yeah. Right. But a friend of his contacted me when they were both in the Arizona Fall League. I started working with both of them, and I did the exact same thing. I said, dude, I can't give you maps right now against these guys you're facing right now, but here's some against some big leaguers. And he was surprised that some of his stuff played there. He was plagued a little bit by control command, but it's like, well, because you're nibbling with your stuff. And it's like, sometimes you have to, I get it, but sometimes you don't. And sometimes you just like, look, at some point you got to dance, and why wait until it's 3-1 and 2-0 to do that? You don't always have to do that. That guy's amazing. He's going to be around a long time. He's learning every day to trust his stuff more and more, and he's going to get better the more he does.
It's so funny you say that because, so the big thing that my big focus on justbaseball.com, which is the website we have with this too, is the prospect side of things. So I had a ball writing up Shane Baz because, prior to his call up, I'm watching all of the video, I'm watching his starts. I'm like, this guy is phenomenal. He seemed to quiet down his mechanics a lot too, and the stuff still played the same. So it was like, okay, this is all making sense. It's all on the way to becoming, what he can be. When I did the write up on his first start, I can't believe you said that. One of the things that stood out to me the most was how comfortable he was attacking guys, because there was multiple starts. One start, he looked like he was nibbling a little bit. And then another start, he looked like he was attacking guys. Right. And I have to pull that up and send that to you after we record, because I'd love to hear what you think. But literally, that was what stood out to me, is you can tell when a young pitcher is trusting his stuff versus when he isn't. And I thought it was pretty tangible when you could see it with Boz as he started to make his second start and then a third start. And it really started to translate there. And you had a Rays team that trusted him in the postseason. I mean, it is really special to see. Is that one of the earliest clients you've taken on in terms of their development? How young do you typically go?
That's about it. Like I say, Wes Burton is I think the first college kid that we've really shook hands on and say, let's officially work together. Yeah. I've helped some in passing. There's a couple other kids that I help, but that's about it. I mean, you start to get into high school and there's one-off stuff. If they have TrackMan info or maybe Rapsodo stuff, like, well, okay, if you're in college with that stuff right now, I would tell you this, but mostly not, mostly upper pro. All right. Shane's probably the youngest before Burton.
I'm going to throw you another young name because the thought of his arsenal excites me. How good can Dylan Cease be?
I'm so glad you brought him up. Now, guess when he started using Codify. Now, right before the start of the last year. Yeah. And granted, look, this guy's got all kinds of guys helping him, and I'm definitely not the only one. But there's a guy that's like, first time I'm talking about, hold the mirror up and go, look how nasty you are.
So nasty.
I'm sorry to put this in your head, but you need to think about the batter. Okay, your stuff's hard to catch. Why are you nibbling? Why are you walking 6 guys every 9 or whatever it was? Trust. He has these massive blue zones on his maps, and he's still working on that. He's still learning to trust. And I always hate to. There's guys like Giolito where sometimes the fan base is down on him, and like, how can you call him an ace? Like, because he's an ace kind of guy. I mean, just, right. And when this guy puts up a low threes or mid threes, it's some kind of failure or whatever. So I hate to say, like some have, is like, watch out, this guy could win a Cy Young award. I hate to put that on anybody ahead of time, but maybe. I mean, he's not at his ceiling, and it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell exactly where that guy's ceiling is. Yeah.
So was one thing with. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's still learning his optimal mix too.
That's what
the nastier stuff is the harder it is day to day sometimes to tell what works. So I might tell him the night before a game, like, hey, do this or whatever. But you wake up the next day and you're like, that curve is just not going where I want it to go. And some, on the fly, they kind of have to dial it back. So totally. Other guys know it's every day. It's like, well, you have 3 pitches. Let's just keep it under 40 on each one or whatever it is. And there's no drama because you can't get rid of one of your 3 pitches.
Yeah. Something I noticed with Cease this past season is the changeup was good in 19, not as good in 20. And then he phased it out a little bit this past year, went to the curveball more, which has always been a good pitch for him, but not used as much. Was that something that you guys were kind of focusing on, is incorporating that curveball a little bit more and maybe not using the changeup as much?
Curve more for sure. The changeup is such a feel thing and a trust thing. And some guys just aren't there. And that the confidence is so big, and he wasn't going out there necessarily confident in. When he's confident with his change, he'll use it. But day to day is like, well, I'm looking at my toolkit going, no, I think I'll be all right with these 4 other pitches that I trust. And that just wasn't in the routine. I want him to use the changeup even 10%. But again, that's a hard pitch to throw 10% of the time. Yeah. So there are challenges there for sure.
So you've got a great relationship with the White Sox. There are a lot of people that use your stuff, and Ethan Katz, I think, is one of the best pitching coaches in baseball. It's on record that Liam said that he needed to still be able to use your services when he signed with the team. He made that clear. They're doing that, obviously, and you got a bunch of White Sox there. You got the catcher, Yasmani Grandal, and I do want to get into how your pitcher and catcher reports differ after this. But Ethan Katz, like, how does he, if you guys have any communication, how does he tailor these guys, and how do you tailor these guys?
Well, I can't speak much for him. He did reach out early on after he was hired, because he's like, what the hell is the outside source, and he's most polite guy. I think the world of him. He called, just said, I need to talk to you. I just need to understand where you come up with this, where you use it. I see you're working with some guys and had success, and they're gonna use it. But it was 20 minutes or whatever. He vetted me, and he's like, okay, I like everything I hear. I came on to get guys out and prevent runs, and it sure as hell sounds like this is going to help do it. But we don't work directly together past that.
Gotcha.
But Giolito's, kind of indirectly, Giolito's obviously practically his best friend, and we talk about him and what he said a lot. And there's nothing in my mind controversial. It's great to see him there, and
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's rare, honestly. The way just general coaches in baseball are, it's a territorial thing. So it is good to hear that, and I'm sure you've come across that through separate occasions. But it's good to see, with the White Sox, that you have somewhat of a seamless, transition there with the two sides.
Yeah, there's been, believe it or not, I know how many. There's been 6 major league pitching coaches that have reached out and ended up smiling and nodding at the very least.
Cool.
There's been teams that have had meetings trying to ban, use of Codify. Like, let's have a meeting. What's this meeting about? Don't use Codify. You're not allowed to. Like, well, here's the thing.
You're hurting yourself.
You're hurting yourself. You're hurting me. This is the team that's going to sit across the table from you this offseason when you're in arbitration. You're like, no, I don't.
Suck. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, wait a second. So I played along with you. I threw it where you told me to throw it. I gave up a home run. And now you tell me I suck, and you're going to pay me less. Like, something's wrong here. So the teams have been generally today okay, but it wasn't that way. And there are still some teams that are pretty hardcore against it. But now I'm bringing on. I have guys on all 30 now, and like you said, it's free. These are free outs. If I was Dan Straley, that first one, I get it, man. If I worked for the teams, I would have been like, no, you're not working with anybody outside. Who the hell is this guy?
You're right.
I totally get it. But Codify's vetted now, right?
Yeah, 100%. I want to ask about the catchers, because I see Jason Castro on here. I see Max Stassi on here, and then I see one of the best pitch callers in baseball, Yasmani Grandal, on here. How does your catcher debrief with those guys differ from the pitcher conversation?
Oh, it's insane. Here's Grandal. He uses me off and on. It's a lot of work, but he has a lot of work to do. The series is starting. I might catch any one of 12 or 13 guys or whatever it is.
Right.
How the hell do I do that? Well, I don't even know when they're going to pitch or who they're going to face. And I have to bat too.
Yeah.
So his stuff is incredible, because when he's able and willing to engage, it's a lot. He'll get maps for all the pitchers.
Wow. And
his batting maps against all the opposing pitchers. It's just an enormous amount of stuff. And that's weird as a batter, because I don't know where the hell the pitcher's going to throw. I know where they have.
Right.
But I'm like, dude, you might think this is a good spot for you as a batter, but this is a blue spot because you're rolling over. And you may think, wow, I really got that one. It's hard. It's tough for a batter, because when they smack a 95-mile-an-hour ground ball, it feels good. It doesn't feel good to run back to the dugout, but you're like, I got that, I almost just a little bit more. And it's, no, you didn't. That's not a good place to swing. And you see that, again, I'm not going to take much credit, if any, but he learned even more so, which pitches to swing at, which not to. And what was it, 420 on base percentage?
Yeah.
I think he had, and what was the other stat? It was like more homers per swing than anyone or something like that. Just bananas. So with the catcher, it's a whole nother thing. Castro and Stassi used it it was 2020, the first of the 2 months we had, used it with the Angels, and they got maps for all the Angels starters. And they did really well. And then Castro ended up on the Padres. And Stassi's like, wait, do I have to pay for these myself now? Well, and poor kid is on the minimum and all that. So Castro still got him for the Padres, but poor Angels didn't get him. Same kind of thing. That was a little less chaotic. It was just for their starters. But Grandal is like for everything. And he'd get this, like, you can see these maps from space. Like, here's every pitch that every pitcher throws that you might catch or might bat against. So
Holy
a lot.
smokes.
But what does the catcher have to do? Whether they have my intel or anyone's, that's a lot of work. And how much did they really do versus just using team stuff?
Right.
Which might be a better way to go. I mean, if you can't do your homework, then what do you do?
There's only 24 hours in the day. Right.
Right. The pitch calling dynamic is fascinating to me because, like, imagine you're a pitcher and you're like, okay, I work with Codify, so I have this influence. I have my own influence. The catchers tell me to do something. The R&D guys have sent me information saying to do something else. Maybe even the front office is giving pressure because the front office does directly influence pitch mix through other avenues. And like, there's a lot of chaos there. And like, who determined which pitch was actually thrown? Right. It's hard to tell on TV. But you don't see him calling pitches from the dugout much these days, right? Because of all the sign stealing. So what ends up happening? It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
In the old days, like Sosha would be like, he'd call every pitch, and you sure as hell better throw it, or you're not going to be pitching for me. So you knew who was calling the pitches there. But here, like, who called that pitch?
Exactly.
So somebody that we had on the show recently, that another guy that just is so exciting if he can put it all together. And I'm extremely high on him, but I'm a little bit biased, having known him a little bit since my days playing in Florida. But Jesus Luzardo, super talented kid, super, super nice dude too. And fortunate enough to know him, but he is one of those guys that you're just waiting. And this, that once it clicks, don't worry. It's going to be over. What? Sorry?
Don't worry. As long as he stays healthy, it'll happen.
Exactly. So I want to hear your thoughts on him because, I mean, the stuff is, you can't say enough about it.
Yeah, he's a maniac. His stuff is just so nasty. Like, we were looking at his breaking balls and I'm like, so how many breaking balls do you think you have? Because when I look at different clumps of velocity and movement, it's like, you're just kind of feeling it out there sometimes, right?
Right.
And that's fine. I like it from one aspect, but from a game planning perspective, when I say throw more, what do we even call that thing that you just threw? It's breaking ball 78. So we need a language. We need to put names on this. And at one point
we asked him what it was too. We're like, what is that thing?
Right. And I don't care. He can call it whatever he wants, but like, we have to put names on types of pitches or not. But the thing is with him is his different types of breaking balls have wildly different results against different bats. So even though it's a pain in the ass to put names on him, we benefit from doing it. So he's amazing. I mean, I think the world of that guy. It sounds like you do too. Really, it hurts as an A's fan for life to see him leave, but I'm used to it. Watching the A's dismantle, so it's just a matter of where these guys go and all that stuff. But he's amazing. His stuff is amazing, and just trusting it again. Just trusting it. A lot of guys tend to see it as a confrontation with the hitter, and other guys have succeeded by starting to see, man, if I plan and just execute. I mean, I'm my biggest opponent, not the batter. It's a weird dynamic because it's not like that growing up. It's like you're going to shove against the hitter, and the hitters, you're like, is it really that way? There are hitters. Who is it? Acuna Jr. I want to say 19, it might have been 20, but like outer third. If you go look, like if anybody threw it on the outer third, it was a strike. No, it was a strike. Before he evolved.
Because he was standing on the plate. Yeah. Right. Yeah, outer third. Like, he wouldn't. By the end of the year, he wasn't even swinging. He's like, I can make my money by defending these 2/3 of the zone, and I have to change my swing too much to go defend that outer third at the time. And now, before he got hurt, he learned to start hitting that without being at the expense of protecting. But other guys, no. I mean, they're like, dude, I'm going to get paid. I can hit 35 home runs
And if you want to put it in this top left part of the zone, tip the cap, go back to the dugout. No one seems to give a damn if I strike out 170 times anymore.
Yeah. Nobody
cares. It's crazy.
It is.
But the intel can help find that. And if you have a pitcher is like, yeah, I can hit the top left quarter of the zone with this pitch, like, well, all day. Up and in, if you can throw an up and in fastball to some of these guys with their swing, all day, just all day.
You're watching pitching all the time. You're looking at diagrams all the time. People you work with or not, if you had to give me a short list of guys that you think just have the grossest stuff in Major League Baseball right now, and you think the world is their oyster, who are these guys?
You can't watch Trinan and not think it.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't. I mean, whatever arguments we have are about like throw more four seamers and no one will ever hit you. Yeah. It's hard to top a guy like that. It's funny because a lot of people say DeGrom, but when you watch, it's like, is that the word? Is that the right word? I mean, the guy's only using half the plate.
Right.
Or half the, it's either that side or off the zone that side. 80% of his pitches are to that side. But it's like two pitches. What percentage of the time? It's just elite and elite. If you watch McCullers, yeah, he's probably up there. And you already said Cease. I mean, just those guys, the guys that throw the wiffle balls. We can't really appreciate something like a Giolito changeup with the camera angle. There's no way to appreciate it.
Right.
So no one's going to think that's nasty watching it if you don't know it's coming in 9 feet behind his fastball or whatever it is. So it's the horizontal stuff that's sexy, right?
Yeah.
So McCullers, Trinan. I mean, Trinan, I thought I would have said before, and then the guy goes and fixes his slider grip, and now it's got 4 times the horizontal. Dude, I big argument we had in the beginning because I mean the sinker was bananas, but lefties were plunking it out to left field, and he was getting aggravated. I'm like, well, that's where the bat is, right? Yeah. He had kind of a gyro slider that would only break, the stats would say 2 or 3 inches. Okay. But where's he letting go of it? 3 feet over off to the right of center from behind him. And he's throwing it in on lefties. It looks like it's breaking like crazy. It's just a rock. He's throwing a rock, but against his other pitches, it lines up well. It tunnels well with everything. And now he throws one that sometimes breaks 15, 16 inches. Jeez. It's not fair.
No.
I mean, imagine having his stuff. Just stand on the mound, close your eyes, and imagine like I can throw like Blake Trinan. I mean, it's surprising if he mixes well and locates. I mean, easier said than done, but it's just like, who's going to hit this guy? And when you hit him, like that's what we said in Oakland, and when he gave up 7 earned runs that entire year.
Yeah,
dude, guys have to get 3 hits off you to score the way they're making contact. Everything's on the ground. So stop walking, guys. Trust your stuff. They're the ones that should be antsy and just, uncomfortable, not you. And, you got some mound presence and trust there.
Totally.
On the flip side, who's one name, and I'm sure there's a bunch of guys you're super excited about, but maybe one under the radar name that you're working with that you can talk about that you think's really going to just take that big step next year?
Oh boy.
We like putting you on the spot here, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I have to get my answer and then see if I can trust saying it.
Yeah.
Let me look at a little list here.
We'll buy you a little bit of time there because there's just, I'm sure there's so many guys that you're really excited about that you had this like, oh, if this guy does this, it's gonna be different. And I'm sure that's what makes you so excited for the season coming up. But I always like to ask those kinds of things of breakouts and stuff like that, because that's something we're always talking about, is trying to identify, who's going to break out next year, and who better to be able to identify those candidates than you, who's literally helping them break out. Right. So it takes a tangible adjustment to break out 99% of the time, and that's what you're helping them achieve. So you got someone queued up?
I had to say breakout because this isn't what you want to hear, but I mean, I watched Stroman. Okay. I know this isn't even close to what you expected. Okay. And it's probably not a fair answer, but because of course he already broke out because the guy's got a $50 million contract or whatever. but his ceiling is not, he's not where his ceiling is right now.
I think that's a good one.
I think there's a ton of opportunity for him to mix differently. The tools he brings to the mound are just insane. Nothing, you may not look at any one pitch and think it's elite. I think a lot of his sinker, it's a true sinker, all that, it's a great pitch. But go look at every one of his pitch types, and he's learning more and more about how to mix them all. What do you do against Stroman? I'm really curious, and I hope I can interact. I don't know if I will with some of the Cubs catching staff to try to do what I can to chip in on the pitch mix. But I'm telling you sub 3 if he mixes well. He's been right there anyway, but mid 2s. I mean, he's really good. And he's just not, every time I watch him, and it's hard to remove the bias sometimes, but go look at all his pitches, and it's like, what would you do against him?
Well,
if he's not thrown anything,
right? And
regularity.
It's clear how finely tuned a mind he is too.
I was to say,
right?
he's so adaptable. He's like a chameleon. He'll come at you so many different ways.
Yeah,
he will. He's got. I know there were different ways catchers caught him in New York, and that was definitely on his mind. Nothing. I wouldn't say anything negative, but catchers catch you differently, and even if you can coerce them to mix the way you want, which is far from easy, they're framing differently. And so, that sinker is a strike a lot more with this guy catching. This guy is dragging the damn thing out of the zone. So your optimal mix is actually different. And like, we wake up in the morning, like, I don't even know who your catcher is. So how am I going to tell you how much you should throw that sinker today when I know there's that big difference there? So there's so much going on. I'm actually excited about this kid, Wes Burton.
Yeah.
I don't help a lot of them. I saw him on Pitching Ninja. He pinged me and he said something like, I should use Codify, ha ha ha. And, and I said, well, I've had my rabies shots, and maybe it's safe to work with you. But he sent me some information, like, oh boy. I mean, so where do you think you're going to go in the draft? He's like, well, I want to go in the top two rounds. I mean, I don't know right now. They only pitched me whatever it was not much last year. I'm like, why not? He was throwing some fastballs just this off season that were rising 2 feet. It's like, so let me get this right. You're 6'8", you're releasing like almost completely overhead, and you're throwing a fastball with like pretty much elite rise.
Yeah.
If you learn 2 other pitches that you can show, right? I mean, just make them average by the time you get up there, and how and when to use them, which he's doing and doing well with. Like, who knows where that kid's ceiling is? So,
right.
I certainly don't work with Jack Leiter, and that wouldn't be sneaking up on anybody, but a guy like that too. It's like when we were watching him, and you get guys out in college a certain way, right? Yeah. That's not how you would get big leaguers out, and I don't know where his ceiling is either. I mean, he's nuts too. So
nuts. Yeah, I had the privilege of seeing Kevin Kopps, because I was with the Padres high A affiliate this past year, and like, kind of same thing with Burton. Like Kopps, you see that one pitch. It's right. Like, if you had a second right now, you're a big league setup guy this year. Right. Like, that's the type of thing that some of these younger guys, like college age guys, can do in 2021 now.
Yes. Liam Hendriks has made it tough on me, because before I had him, I'd preach a little bit about don't throw your fastball so much. It's usually roping guys back, and like, you throw your fastball 70-75%. Guys can comfortably guess fastball, and that's a problem. But Liam Hendriks, he should throw his fastball 70% of the time. And he was on with Ninja, and I was watching watching it air, and he was saying, when I get a swinging strike with a fastball on a guy and the at-bat's not over, he's going to get another fastball next pitch. And I'm like, oh shit. Don't ever say that out loud. Like, right. What are you doing? And that's probably really stupid, right? Because generally that's stupid. I mean, that you should never do that, right? But I better go look and see. I looked the last 100 times in an at-bat before it was over, he got a whiff with a fastball. 99 of those 100 times he threw a fastball the next pitch and gave up one scratchy 70-mile-an-hour single. It's like, okay, yeah. If you're Liam, keep doing it. The answer is not the same for all these guys. And even though it's often similar for some, rope get down so guys can't guess your next pitch or even want to guess your next pitch.
Yeah.
With Liam,
I think Liam could give him the old one of these and fire it in there, and it wouldn't even matter. It wouldn't even matter. So one more specific question, just because I'm always fascinated by the way the environment affects pitchers here. I see you have Antonio Senzatella and Colorado Rockies guy. This is probably a different beast for you, right? Because this is something that I think is still a very fluid situation where you're trying to figure out the best pitch mix to work at altitude. And if I'm not, you correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not totally positive on this, but as far as I know, it's horizontal movement is not as affected. Vertical movement is more affected by the altitude, right? So how do you attack that for an area where you're literally playing on like the moon?
Right. My system is trying to guess how they'll pitch the next game. So in his case, it would look and go, you're at Coors, your breaking stuff isn't going to break as much, what does that mean? And he's a wild success story that you're just never going to really talk about, because like the guy, it's like he's invisible sometimes. Like, who talks about Senzatella? And then you go here, like they just signed him for what, 550? Yep. Like, who is this guy? He's amazing. He can adapt to each spot. If you go look at his Coors numbers, they're good. Some guys try to make their ball do more at Coors, and it's like, yeah, that's not how that works.
Right.
He knows where, when he's at Coors, how the location varies, and he's been really good at adapting to that. That's half the time. I worked with Daniel Bard as well for a time.
Yeah,
he's off and on too, because he's another guy. Definitely the Rockies aren't totally thrilled with guys working with their pitchers.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing of guys going from that altitude down to sea level. It goes the other way too. I mean, some of these West Coast parks that nobody really talks about, like this park is at sea level, man. Yeah. And it's a night game, and the marine layer just came in. I don't know if you've ever been out west, any of those parks, Petco or up in Seattle or something, where that like you can see it, and like, okay,
Seattle, yeah.
Okay, guess what? You can give up fly balls now because they're not going to go out, and it's a real thing, depending on the launch angle. It's an interesting animal, and Coors gets in guys' head. It's actually a big advantage to live there and work there and know whatever it is. You got to chew gum more, and all the little tricks that they have that these poor guys that come in here. The bigger challenge for me is the guys that come in once a year.
Yeah,
and like, okay, you're going to get a start here. Here's how this works for guys that live there. It's nice to be able to point to Senzatella and go, he doesn't pitch exactly like you, but he's got a couple pitches like you, and he benefits from doing this. You probably should do the same.
Yeah. So one more from me, Michael. I think if any minor league, say big league or college arm is listening to this, I think they understand why your stuff is useful. If you have advice to maybe the high school arms that are listening to this podcast right now, if you could give them one piece of advice moving forward in the baseball ranks, if they have dreams of this lofty major league career as a pitcher, what do you think youth baseball, high school baseball should be doing sooner that they haven't done traditionally?
That's a good question. I only really deal with one-off guys. I'm not going to watch high school games anymore. No time.
Yeah.
But when I talk to those guys, it's like I said, it's if you have aspirations to continue, rather than just be a hero in high school or a hero in college and go off and do your thing, you need to learn how your stuff plays at a higher level now, whether you need it or not. And that's been the focus. Actually, we're friendly with the Mustard guys, Tom House, Rocky Collis, and their tool is amazing. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but you can pop your camera up, take video of a kid pitching, throwing a couple pitches. It draws the skeleton in and says, hey, your head's off, you got to do this faster or whatever. That's been pretty wild. I know that the data just wasn't available for these lower levels. Now it's becoming available. Right. And I've gotten a lot of, I don't want to say pressure, but a lot of pings from those lower levels of, what do you have high school and even lower level maps? Yeah. and some of these parents are like, I'll pay, just tell me how much you want,
Oh my
because they want
gosh.
their kid to go. They want the brass ring. And it's like, oh boy,
Travel ball moms. Yep.
even, sadly, even younger ages, I mean, like, hey, my 7-year-old's, can you help him with this curveball and this and that? I'm like, no, I'm not going to be a part of that.
Yeah, so I would say part of it's just enjoying the game, right, and just having fun, like, because it turns into a job, right? And like this is how your business was created, through helping these guys be the best at their job so that they can make a wage that would support their family. But like, the thing is, you want to enjoy baseball as long as you can before you get there, right? Like, you want to enjoy just going on the mound and throwing fastballs by guys and having fun, until you have to start really focusing on each little thing to try to make as much money as you can. I mean, it's crazy to see that the little league effect that we're seeing now in travel ball, and it's starting too young, I think.
I totally agree with that. And then there's this little voice in me saying, there are kids that quit this game because it's not fun enough. And what's fun? Kind of winning and doing well. And some kids get frustrated because they didn't make that one little tweak and do well enough to either not quit or not get cut. So I totally agree with what you said. I totally feel the way you feel, but there's also that little voice saying, well, maybe a little bit of the right thing, the right way, keeps a lot of kids in the game and not running off to some other sport. So it's a weird dynamic there.
Aram, you got anything else?
Oh man, I had a blast. I think I got all my questions out, but
okay, good.
I could probably come up with a bunch more. Then I'm gonna end up shooting you a message, but you answered all of these so amazing. It's so fascinating, and congratulations on everything you've built.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
The story is incredible, and I mean, to be where you are is got to be one of those things where you look back and you're like, how did I get up here?
Every morning, the first thought. I know I'm good at what I do, but I've been extremely fortunate to just go down this road and be here. It's insane,
man. Yeah, Michael Fisher at Codify. This is awesome, and just baseball will of course be Codify truthers and all that, and hopefully we can have you on again very soon.
Thank you. That sounds like a good t-shirt.
Yeah,
good talking to you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Michael. That was awesome. Really appreciate it.